Chapter 1661. Wu Wu Yin was very cunning, and her endurance was extremely high. Besides that, she was very loyal to Mo Zhao. Little Fox was probably. I thought Mo Zhao is dead. Is Wu Wu Yin kidnapping Little Fox out of revenge? Would she have any other intention? Yin Chen's fingers were clenched tightly. Gu Shijiu took a breath. She remembered Di Fui once said Mo Zhao would take 40 to 50 years to resurrect. However, it was only 9 years since he died. Hence, Mo Zhao should not be the culprit. However, what Di Fui failed to include was the fact that Mo Zhao was an omen born from heavy sorrow. If the world was operating peacefully, he probably needed to take 40 to 50 years to resurrect. Unfortunately, the continent was in chaos, and many died when Di Fui and Gu Zijiu were trapped in the Forbidden Land. These were sorrowful times. The evil energy from the sorrow were premium nutrients for the omen to restore its spirit. Perhaps that resulted in the early revival of the omen. Of course, it might only be Wu Wu Yin. However, everything was still unknown. It was still okay if Wu Wu Yin was the only one plotting against them. It would be a disaster if Mo Zhao was the main culprit. Regardless of the intention, the most important thing to do now is to find Little Fox. Gu Shijiu grunted. She went on a quick linger on the trail, but everything seemed to have been destroyed. Even if Wu Wu Yin had left some clues, so many people have searched the place, so it is possible that the clues are now useless. She glimpsed at Lan Yu and asked, "What have your people found?" Lan Yu shook his head. "Nothing. The blue fox family has a tracing beast, and it's very sensitive to odor. It could find anyone based on Theodore as long as it was less than 2 days since they went missing. The tracing beast could find that person even if the target ran through a crowded market. However, it did not want to continue anymore when it came here." Gu Shijiu added with a frown. "How long after she left did you send the tracing beast to find her?" "We sent the tracing beast out to find her the day after we realized she was gone. We only found this place after a day of searching." "1 day? It took so long?" Lan Yu heaved a sigh. "Little Fox changed her odor when she ran away, so the tracing beast couldn't stop wandering in the palace. Later, I realized something was wrong, so I brought the tracing beast out from the palace and finally found it here." "Had she changed her odor again when she came here?" Lan Yu shook his head. "The blue fox family has a way to change their odor, but it can only last for about an hour, and it could not be changed again in the next 3 days. We suspect she has got into a flying vehicle after she came here." Lu Wu, who was wandering around like an adult, suddenly joined the conversation. "No. It has been 5 days since the last flying vehicle passed by." Lan Yu paused for a second and continued. "Where did she leave then?" "Regardless of what kind of vehicle she took, the tracing beast would definitely find it as long as it was a land transport." Gu Shijiu pondered. "Is it possible to perform the ground drilling technique in the compound of the blue fox family?" Lan Yu shook his head again. "No. There's a wizardry barrier underground. She can't escape with ground drilling." Suddenly, he seemed to recall something. "Unless you meant that she escaped with ground drilling after she ran out from the city. Only people with a level 9 spiritual power could perform that technique anyway. Little Fox was still far from level 9, though. What if the kidnapper possessed a level 9 spiritual power?" Gu Shijiu asked. Lan Yu could not speak a word. Chapter 1662. Although Yin Shun was in a state of panic, he could still hold himself together and think clearly. Wu Wu Yin should have someone assisting her. I am betting that she was responsible for luring Little Fox out, and then someone else brought her away. Meanwhile, Wu Wu Yin continued to manipulate the maidservant's body until the maidservant returned to the blue fox family. She probably left secretly after that. Gu Shijiu nodded. People with level 9 spiritual power can only use the ground drilling technique alone and won't be able to bring someone along. One must possess level 9.5 or above to bring someone along. Thus, her assistant must be an expert. That was a very well-planned trap. Regardless of whether Wu Wu Yin or the assistant came up with it, they were both prepared. Seeing the extent of the plan, it must have been orchestrated over a month ago. The question that everyone was trying to figure out now was why they wanted Little Fox. It was strange for them to go through all that hassle to get her. Perhaps. Gu Shijio shifted her gaze to Lan Yu. Is there any other special traits about little Fox's bloodline? She knew that a normal human could enhance their physique and upgrade their spiritual power if they married blue fox women. In other words, if the original physique of a man could only go up to level 5 of spiritual power, it could be maximized to level 8 if the man had sex with blue fox women. Therefore, the men in this continent were proud of marrying any blue fox women. However, this applied to all the blue fox women. Hence, Gu Shijio knew this could not be the only reason. Lan Yu was stunned by Gu Zijia's question. I hope you can come clean to me, especially in times like this. I need to know everything, and it has to be the truth. Lan Yu took a breath and sighed as he took a glimpse at Yin Shun. Finally, he decided to tell the truth. Little Fox is the daughter of the National Master, while the bloodline of the National Master is so much purer than the normal blue fox women. Therefore, a man can not only enhance his physique if he has sex with her, but can also immediately upgrade his spiritual power. Yin Shin's face immediately changed as he glared at Lan Yu with his fingers clenched in his sleeves. Is that the reason you forced her to marry you? Lan Yu coughed and added, I like her too. He liked her too. The main reason Lan Yu wanted to marry her was still because of her bloodline. Everything else was secondary. Yin Shin closed his eyes momentarily as he tried to suppress his anger. He should not let her go so easily. His little fox deserved the best man to pamper her with his sincere heart. Now, he had no idea who was the one who kidnapped her and whether she suffered any abuse. Was she terrified? Did she cry? Lan Wei's blood has another function. Suddenly, someone spoke in Gu Zijia's mind. Gu Shijio immediately shifted her gaze to the firmament stone. It finally woke up. What's it? Her blood can purify anything by eliminating all the negative factors. I'm sure you know the cultivators from the evil clans would lose control over themselves when they have to carry out many cruel tasks. Well, Lan Wei's blood can calm their minds and prevent from losing control. Hence, they will be able to do any cruel tasks after they drink their blood. The firmament stone generally explained the knowledge to Gu Shijio. Gu Zijia's fingers immediately clenched tightly. If Little Fox's captors only wanted to have sex with her to upgrade their spiritual power, she would still be alive. However, if the kidnapper wanted her blood, things could be really bad. Hence, Lan Yu, Yin Chun, and Gu Shijio had to get this thing resolved as soon as possible, and they could not afford to delay a single minute. Now, all the pointers were pointing at Wu Wuyin. However, Gu Shijio did not know much about Wu Wuyin. Back then, she suffered amnesia when Wu Wuyin possessed her original body, and when she returned from the underground palace, she realized her original body was already sealed in the crystal coffin by Di Fui. Therefore, she did not know how Wu Wuyin left her body, and she also never asked. The obvious thought in her mind now was that she had to ask Di Fui about it. If it were not absolutely necessary, Gu Shijio would never want to contact Di Fui. However, this was related to Little Fox's safety. Finally, she has made up her mind. She took a breath with the jade tablet on her hand and began to connect. Chapter 1663, the jade tablet was blinking, and it was finally connected after a while. Two words were heard from the other end in a casual tone. What's up? Gu Shijio paused for a second and asked directly, Back then, how did you settle Wu Wuyin? She ran away. I couldn't find her. Di Fui did not hide anything. It was hard to believe someone could escape from Di Fui. Was Wu Wuyin so capable? How did she escape? I passed her my subordinate when I had to save you. However, she was already gone and left your original body behind when I returned. I did try to call her soul, but nothing was detected. Perhaps she found another body. What's going on? Why are you asking about her so randomly? Little Fox has gone missing. I suspect she's involved. Gu Shijio told him about her speculation. It was silent on the other end. Suddenly, he asked, Where are you now? Gu Shijio frowned because she did not want to explain too much to Di Fui, and she did not want to talk about anything that was not relevant to the incident. What's Wu Wuyin's spiritual power? Does she know the ground drilling technique? She was at level 8 when she left, and she didn't know ground drilling. Gu Shijio took a breath. It seemed that her speculation was right, and someone was helping Wu Wuyin. Was it really Mo Zhao? Mo Zhao wanted to resurrect completely. Hence, he sent Wu Wuyin to kidnap Little Fox. But where would they go with Little Fox? Was Little Fox still alive? Gu Zijia's heart was burning as she looked at Yin Shun, who was staring at her. One often got panicked when he was involved in an emergency. Yin Shun, who used to be calm, was now very pale and his fingers were trembling. His mind went blank, and he was completely lost. He had to put all bets on Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio was always a capable person. Hence, if anyone could save Little Fox, it was her. However, Little Fox must be so terrified and helpless now. He blamed himself for not being able to stay by her side when she needed someone. He wished he could protect her. Usually, Little Fox would always hide behind him whenever she was in danger, while he would usually protect her whenever there was a dangerous situation. However, he was so helpless now, and he did not even know where exactly she could be. What if she does not make it? Yenshin did not dare to overthink. He did not seem to notice that his fingernails had poked into his palms and blood was dripping down. Shijio, how can we find her? Tell me, I'll follow. He just could not wait to take action, but he had no idea where to start. Lan Yu frowned too, with his lips pursed tightly. She has been missing for 3 days. Perhaps she has been forced to. 3 days were more than enough for the kidnapper to force her to have sex. Even if they find her, she would not be a virgin anymore. He was outraged as well. However, he could keep himself calm. We need to find her. I just want her to live, and nothing else is more important than that. Yin Chen interrupted Lan Yu. Lan Yu added icily, She is my empress. Everything about her is very important to me, especially her virginity. Yin Chun was speechless. He looked very pale and decided not to speak anymore. She is still alive. Suddenly, Di Fui's voice was heard from the jade tablet in Gu Zijia's hand. Yin Chen's eyes sparkled. How do you know? Asked Yin Chun. Di Fui did not answer but asked, Tell me your exact location. I'm heading there. Therefore, Yin Chen quickly reported their location. Di Fui was really fast because he took less than an hour to get there. Chapter 1664. When Di Fui arrived, Gu Shijio was busy checking the surroundings with Lu Wu and the muscle. She finally found something different this time, because Lu Wu smelled something that carried the aura from mermaids. Mermaids dominated the ocean, and they hardly went up to the land. Besides that, those who could go up to the land were usually the elites or the leaders of the mermaids. Since the aura was relatively weak, Lu Wu could not identify the exact time the aura was left there. However, Lu Wu could tell that the mermaid just appeared randomly and disappeared again. Strangely, its aura had combined with Little Fox's aura. Did the mermaid just pass by here coincidentally, or was it involved in the case? Di Fui came alone, and he appeared out of the blue beside the muscle. The muscle had secretly caught a wild rabbit, and it was ready to satisfy its tongue. However, it was frightened and shocked when it suddenly saw Di Fui, who was wearing a purple robe, and almost got choked by the wild rabbit. It quickly tried its best to swallow the rabbit. Celestial Masters what? Di Fui glared at him. Casually, he said, I'm no longer Celestial Masters what? The muscle was confused. It used to address him this way. How else would the muscle address him? Di Fui did not bother it, but looked at the other 3 at the scene. Anyone can tell me what exactly happened here? Gu Shijio and Lu Wu did not bother to answer him, because they were checking on some stains in front of the bushes. On the other hand, Yinshin was not good at speaking. Hence, Lan Yu courageously explained everything in detail from the beginning to the end. Di Fui glimpsed at Gu Shijio just as she finished checking on the clue that they found. Their gazes met each other. Gu Shijio looked calm and normal, while Di Fui's gaze seemed rather dim. What say you? Asked Di Fui. Gu Shijio was very straightforward. After checking around, I realized there were some torn branches, and it seems that some intense fight happened here. Lu Wu could smell the aura of Little Fox and a mermaid in one of the bushes. If my analysis is correct, Little Fox was kidnapped by a mermaid who used the ground drilling technique. Yin-chun was stunned to learn that a mermaid was involved. The mermaids would not simply come to the land. Why would they kidnap Little Fox? He then walked around the bushes and realized the bushes were perfectly fine, and he did not see any torn branches. He immediately looked at Gu Shijio and wondered whether her eyes were working. Lanyu was also confused. He had instructed his people to search the area multiple times, but they did not even find a single strand of hair, not to mention any sign of an intense fight. Difui walked over and took a look. He flicked his fingers, and a beam of light flashed across the scene. The perfect bushes immediately turned messy. Someone had covered the bushes with magic. Hence, an intense fight did happen here because they also found a few spots of dark brown bloodstains. Luwu quickly ran over and smelled the bloodstains. Confidently, it said, "This blood belongs to Lan Weihu. Oh wait, this one belongs to the mermaid." It seems like the mermaid was also injured, but Lan Weihu's injury was more serious. Gu Shijio frowned. Lan Weihu possessed a level 8 of spiritual power. However, she was cowardly. Thus, she might not be able to use 70% of her power if no one was there to guide her. Based on her kung fu ability and the knowledge above, if she could also hurt the mermaid, that means the mermaid's power was not that high either. Perhaps the mermaid's power was below level 9. Chapter 1665. Without a level 9 spiritual power, how could the mermaid kidnap Lan Weihu with the ground drilling technique? Aqua drilling, said Difui. The three of them immediately looked at him. Difui added, the mermaids are very good at aqua drilling. As long as there's water underground, they can escape with anyone. Yin-chun and Lanyu looked at each other. There must be water underground. However, they could not follow the mermaid because they never learned aqua drilling. Gu Shijio paused and realized that she knew the aqua drilling technique. After all, she had Lan Jing's memories in her head. However, the water flow underground was very complicated with multiple branches. Hence, she could not find Little Fox's aura nor the mermaids, even though she could go underground. Luwu could find their aura, but it could not swim. Hence, it would probably die from suffocation if it went underground. Perhaps she could ask Lan Yawang to help? After all, he knew the most about the mermaids. Besides that, he could also help to check if any mermaids traveled to land recently. Lately, Lan Yawang was quite close to Gu Shijio. He swung by her residence twice a month. Regardless of whether Gu Shijio acknowledged him as her younger brother or not, he insisted on addressing her as his sister. One should never hurt someone with good intention. Thus, Gu Shijio could not show Lan Yawang with her anger, even though she did not want to be Lan Jinka. Moreover, she silently acknowledged him as her brother. In fact, Lan Yawang had given her a paging shell so that it was easier for them to keep in touch. Suddenly, Difui grabbed Gu Zijia's hand just when she was about to take out the paging shell. Let's find Little Fox using aqua drilling. Difui was always fast when he had to take action. Before Gu Shijio could respond to him, she had a blackout. When she could open her eyes to have a clearer view, she already heard the sound of water flowing, and she saw a big undercurrent in front of her. Gu Shijio was speechless. She subconsciously initiated the aqua drilling technique and then withdrew her hand. She did not want to have any physical contact with him anymore. She needed to stay calm. Gu Zijia's priority was to find Little Fox. What now? Difui took out a wizardry shell and blew once. Instantly, the water around them began to gush to the east. There! Difui put his wizardry shell away and stretched his hand toward Gu Shijio. Let me bring you. It's fine, I'm good. Gu Shijio turned around and moved toward the water's direction. She was quite good at aqua drilling. Her body was like an apparition that disappeared in the blink of an eye. Difui remained silent for a few seconds as he looked at his empty hand. He then shook his head and immediately rushed toward that direction. After traveling for 7 to 8 miles, he finally saw Gu Shijio waiting for him ahead. He rushed over and realized there were 4 to 5 branches further ahead. No wonder she was willing to wait for him. She quietly waited there for him to show her their next direction when he came over. She really treated him like a normal friend now. In fact, It did not even seem to be a normal friend, but rather an acquaintance. She was very cold, but courteous. That was what he wanted, and he was the one who caused all this mess. He smiled, and then took out his wizardry shell again. This time, he explained to her, when you blow this shell with water's spiritual power, it can sense whether any mermaid passed by the water here. Nah, try it yourself. He passed the shell to her. Gu Shijio refused to take it. Just do it. He had blown on the shell with his saliva on it earlier. Hence, she did not want to kiss him indirectly. Chapter 1666 Casually, Di Fui added, You want to find your friend, and him just helping you. The hidden meaning was, are you not embarrassed to just waste so much of my spiritual power? Gu Shijio was speechless. She took the wizardry shell over quietly and then secretly applied a cleaning spell on it. She then blew it with water's spiritual power. However, there was no response. She looked at him. Although there was not even a tiny spot of light underground, based on their kung fu, they could see everything even though they were in the dark. Thus, Di Fui could see her clear eyes. It was big and round with very clear pupils. Her skin was fair, and her lips were pinkish. As she stood in the water, she looked more beautiful to him than the prettiest mermaid in the world. Di Fui shifted his gaze away and taught her the way to blow the wizardry shell in the water. He explained all the details while she paid complete attention to him. When he was teaching her, their bodies were very close to each other because there were many details to be explained. They were so close to the extent that Di Fui could smell the light fragrance on her. Fortunately, they did not have any physical contact because Gu Shijio was very alert and she tried to avoid any possible contact at all cost. Gu Shijio also smelled his odor, which she was once very familiar with. However, the smell made her feel as if someone was stabbing her wound. She frowned and temporarily sealed her sense of smell to prevent herself from being annoyed again. Gu Shijio had always been a fast learner. Very soon, she mastered the technique and took charge of detecting the mermaid's aura. Suddenly, a question popped up in her head. Oh, by the way, since Little Fox doesn't know aqua drilling, would she die during the journey? How did the mermaid manage to kidnap her? Di Fui took a glimpse at her. You could try to find the answer from your memories. Gu Zijia's fingers were clenched. Indeed, she had part of Lan Jing's memories. However, she subconsciously put it away as she did not want to recall anything between Di Fui and her. If it were not for Little Fox, she would not ever want to use aqua drilling. Di Fui just could not help but urge her to think about Lan Jing's memories. Did he think that it was not hurtful enough for her? Or did he want to turn her into Lan Jinka? Again, she had a cold look on her face as the annoyance crept in. That's not my memories. I don't want to dig through it. Just forget about it if you don't want to answer. Just pretend I never asked. She turned around and rapidly moved ahead. Di Fui remained silent. It seemed that she was still very sensitive. He did not think about it and triggered her wounds again. He sighed and then made an effort to quickly catch up to her. When he finally found her, he simply explained, the mermaid could escape by engulfing the human in a bubble. The air in the bubble can last for about an hour. Gu Shijio finally understood. So, if the mermaid didn't want Little Fox to die, he or she would need to breathe on land in intervals. As soon as they finished talking, the two of them had passed 7 to 8 junctions, and it was more than 100 miles from where they started. Suddenly, the water gushed up vertically when they blew the wizardry shell again. Needless to ask, the mermaid had brought Little Fox up to the land. Thus, they immediately left the underground and went up to the land. Surprisingly, it was a sea of flowers outside with many unknown flowers scattered all over the hill. The exit from the underground was a big lake. It was nightfall. Under the moonlight, the lake looked shiny in the breezy night. The scene was as beautiful as an art masterpiece. A couple of lovebirds went out for a date during the sunset and only left when the moon was up above the willow tree. The scene was indeed beautiful. Both of them had numerous romantic experiences together since they met. Back then, their hearts were filled with love, and she wished there was a day like this every year in her life. However, when she saw this scene again, she felt countless thorns stuck in her heart. Chapter 1667. Gu Shijio took a deep breath. She tried to suppress the frustration inside her and began to search around. It was easier to find clues here because no one would have interfered with anything. In a brief time, she found the clues related to the mermaid and little fox. There were torn branches scattered there, and Gu Shijio inferred that it was left there since 2 days ago. She also predicted that little fox must have been under someone's control. However, the mermaid who kidnapped her did not seem to have a relaxing journey. He or she has been resting here for a period of time. Di Fui was watching her looking for clues, and she did not turn around to check on him at all. She lived a great life now, and would probably live an even better one in the future. After a few years, she would completely forget about him. She would live for many years while the relationship between him and her would be just a short story in her long life. Perhaps she would find someone who could be with her forever in the future and fight side by side with her, just like what they had gone through together back in the old days. He remembered that she has once mentioned that it was fine for a lady to find a jerk. However, she must know when to let go and forget about the jerk and then live a better life. He also remembered that she said time was the best medicine for pain because all types of pain would fade and disappear as time passed. He remembered many things that she said. Although he did not use to bother to remember those small things, he remembered everything she said, and he would never forget them. He decided to sit on a green rock and watch her. Stopping himself from being near to her was such a difficult task for him. He really wished to see her as long as he could in his lifetime. Even if she never gives him a smile, even if she was just talking and laughing with other men, or even if she just treated him as a stranger. He looked at his hands and realized he has never felt so stupid before. After Gu Shijio finished checking the surrounding, she turned around and realized that Di Fui was sitting with a fruit platter in front of him. There were 4 types of fruits on the plate, and 2 were once her favorite fruits. Gu Shijio had a sweet tooth. Hence, she liked fruits with high sugar content. Back then, he always prepared fruits for her, especially her favorites. He wanted to help her restore her energy anytime and anywhere. Di Fui looked back at her, and then threw a golden pear to her. Take a pear to restore your energy. The aqua drilling technique consumed a lot of energy. Thanks. Gu Shijio flicked her sleeve, and the pear immediately flew back to him. She took out an apple from her storage bag and began to chew on it as she sat on a rock. Di Fui looked at the pear in his hand and then looked at her. Smilingly, he said, "Celestial Master Gu, we are just partners who work together now. I have no other intention, so you don't have to draw such a line between us. It was just a pear. Did she need to do that?" Gu Shijio did not even bother to lift her head as she responded, "It doesn't matter whether there's a line or not. I just don't want to eat the pear. You once liked it very much. As you said, I liked it before, but not anymore. Everyone's food preference can change." When she finished talking, she had eaten half of her apple. The fruit tasted more sour than sweet, and it was a little bitter toward the end. However, she really liked the taste recently. One would find it difficult to bear with pain if they had too much sweetness in their life. In fact, how would life only be filled with sweetness? Gu Shijio looked pitiful as she was sitting there eating the apple. It was as though she was an abandoned young beast which tried very hard to live independently. She looked tough yet fragile, and that made people feel sympathetic for her. Chapter 1668. Abruptly, Di Fui looked away and asked, "What have you discovered?" There are 2 different sets of footprints. One set belongs to Little Fox, and the other belongs to the mermaid. I can recognize Little Fox's footprints. As for the mermaid, the footprints are not too deep or too big. I assume that these footprints belong to a woman of not more than 163 centimeters, and her weight would be. She had precisely predicted the weight and height of the woman. Then, her eyes rested on Di Fui. "You know who she is, right?" Di Fui did not deny. "I know. If I am not mistaken, she should be Lan Jingyi. She has been missing for 5 days." To guess the identity correctly was one thing. To hear his confession was another. Gu Shijio took a deep breath before she continued. "You are only here with me because you are looking for Lan Jingyi, aren't you?" Di Fui was very non-committal about her question. "What is the difference?" "Regardless of my intention, We are all sharing the same goal." She was right. She was looking for Little Fox, and he was looking for Longingy. Of different means, they were working to achieve the same end. It did not come as a surprise to Gu Shijio anymore that he offered his help so eagerly. Gu Shijio tried to calm down. She already felt bad enough, as though there was a lump in her throat. She could no longer finish the other half of her apple. She threw the apple away and stood up. She took a look around on the ground, trying to look for the water source to perform the aqua drilling technique. Difui stood and tidied up his robes. He then picked up the unfinished apple that she left behind on the ground. The apple was already dirty after taking a few rolls on the dirt. Difui cleaned the fruit a little and took a bite. The fruit tasted sour and astringent. It was her least favorite flavor. She liked the taste now all of a sudden. Was it a reflection of how she truly felt inside? He kept the unfinished apple in his storage bag and performed the water manipulation magic as well. Gu Shijio was very fast, so Difui was 15 minutes behind her. When Difui finally caught up with her, she was pretty calm. She saw Difui and frowned a little. "Perhaps we should go separate ways to speed things up," she said nonchalantly. She did not want to be on the same path as him anymore. They have used the same waterway. There is no need to chase after them separately, Difui said firmly. Immediately, Gu Shijio passed the wizardry shell to him. "If you're here looking for someone, too, you should not say that you are here to help. You should contribute as well." If they were both looking for someone they cared for, why should she be the only one making the effort? Difui did not expect that she would mind it. He hesitated, then passed magic shell back to her. Promptly, he took out another one. "I have one more. We could take turns to blow the shells. Now we are even." Gu Shijio did not know what to say, as he was trying to make things clear between them. He refused to take any kind of losses on his own. Anyway, she did not want to take advantage of him, so she agreed. They continued to move forward. At every junction, both of them would blow the magic shell to observe the ripples. None of them took advantage of anyone. It was the first time for Gu Shijio to use the instrument. Certainly, she would make some mistakes now and then and point it the wrong way. Luckily, Difui had a very strong perceptive insight, so he could always correct her in time whenever she made the slightest misjudgment. Thus, none of them made any wrong turns. Unless the situation was really necessary, none of them talked to each other at all. Unknowingly, they had traveled many miles underground. Chapter 1669. Occasionally, Gu Shijio and Difui would exit the underground and go to the surface to take a few breaths. They attentively checked the traces, which clearly showed that they were on the right path. Executing the aqua drilling technique was very physically draining. Even though Gu Zijia's spiritual power was already very advanced, her physical capability was still incomparable to Difui's. Toward the end, it was Difui who did everything, blowing the magic shell and checking the ripples. Gu Shijio was only following him around. Perhaps she had been in the underground waterway for too long. Gu Shijio started to feel a pain in her stomach. It started mildly at first, but it gradually became more severe. It could be her menstrual pain, but if it were, then it would be the severest of its kind. It was as though a knife was slowly slashing through her internals. She was in such great pain that she broke out in cold sweats. She was skilled in medicine, after all. Even though she had never experienced the pain, she knew exactly what was happening. She had not been having her period for the past 6 months, which was most probably due to her extreme emotional roller coaster. She almost thought that her period had disappeared for good, for her spiritual power was strong enough to get rid of it once and for all. However, her current pain in the stomach reminded her that it was the time of the month again. This was not good timing to have a period. She had to slow down to regulate her breathing. She directed the flow of her spiritual power to her lower abdomen to slowly ease the pain. On the other hand, Difui was taking the lead and moving fast. Gu Shijio was eager to see Little Fox, so she quickly went along with him. If this happened in the past, she would make him hold her. She would also request for his medical attention. While they were together for the past 8 years, she would easily make him hold, or, at least, take her hand whenever she felt the slightest discomfort. Sometimes, he would even have to carry her on his back. Those were all her delicate times. He was always there to be her most reliable support and protection. Now that he was no longer her support, she had to support herself. Even though she was in pain, she had to grit her teeth and go through the hardship on her own. The pain was so unbearable that her legs were starting to feel weak. She was starting to suffer from temporary blackouts, but refused to say anything. She thought to herself that she would endure the remaining miles of their journey. She would treat herself when they were back to the surface. Distracted, she certainly did not see Di Fui, who had just made an abrupt stop. She was caught off guard and bumped into him. She was a little lightheaded from the impact of their collision. Intuitively, she took a few steps backward. Before recovering from the dizziness, she could feel someone holding onto her hand tightly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Why did you stop so suddenly?" Perplexed, she frowned in disbelief. She wanted to pull her hand away. However, Di Fui was reluctant to let her go. "Your complexion does not seem right." "What's wrong?" He quickly held on her wrist to read her pulse. Gu Shijio struggled to break free from his hold, but failed, so she started to lose her temper instead. "Let me go." "Di Fui, I'm telling you now that a man and woman should not have any physical contact." The struggle made her condition even worse. Her face grew paler, and she was in more pain. She was not able to endure the pain any longer. Quickly, she bent her body down, hoping that it could ease the pain. In an instant, she forgot that she had to use the aqua drilling technique and drowned. Di Fui said nothing further. He pulled her close into his arms and rushed upward to the surface. When the pain faded, she found herself safely on the ground. It was a vast coverage of brilliant white snow. The place was also surrounded by enchanting red plum. They were now in a plum park on a snow mountain. It was unusually cold in an otherwise warm early spring. Snow started to fall. Chapter 1670. The snowflakes floated lightly in the air and fell gently on the petals of the plum flowers. The distinctive colors set each other off, making the reds more delightfully charming and the whites even more enchanting. The clusters of red flowers looked even more attractive in the nightlight with the touch of white snow. Gu Shijio was not in the mood to enjoy the perfectly scenic view of red plum flowers in the snow. The pain was too much for her to bear. "Are you on your period?" Di Fui held on her wrist tightly to read her pulse. "None of your business." His hands were warm, but she was somewhat irritated by his touch, especially now that she was already frustrated by her discomfort. She struggled, and finally, she broke free from his grasp. Groggily, she took a few quick steps backward and saw a green rock next to her. Without noticing if there was snow on the rock, she quickly sat on it. Before she managed to sit, Di Fui was already holding her up, preventing her from sitting on the rock. "The surface of the rock is cold. You cannot suffer from the cold at the moment." Then, he raised his arms and performed a spell to create a wizardry barrier. Within the bubble, there was a soft, fluffy wool blanket to keep her warm when she sat on it. He took out a red pill and put it next to her mouth. "Take the pill." Instinctively, Gu Shijio was afraid of all the pills that were given by him. She turned her head around to avoid his hand. I have my own pills." She held on firmly despite the extreme pain and searched for the pills in her storage bag. She found one pale red pill and swallowed it. The pill was supposed to make her warm. The evil effects of the cold must have affected her when she was in the underground waterway, which had further worsened her menstrual pain. She wanted to meditate, but the extreme pain distracted her. She could not even sit well. Her fingers were trembling when she wanted to perform the spell. Di Fui grabbed her hands tightly and said, "Sit well so that I can ease your pain." Gu Shijio was still struggling to keep her distance. "As I said, we are now a team, so I cannot disregard the pain that you are suffering." "I mean no harm," Di Fui explained. Sweat broke out on her forehead, but her eyes were shining brightly, for she knew what she was doing. She took a deep breath to calm herself down. "Thank you. You can continue the search for yourself. Leave me alone." Di Fui was capable enough to continue the search on his own. It was unnecessary to drag Gu Shijio along. She really did not want to work alongside him anyway. Also, She refused to have any physical contact with him. Without further ado, Di Fui pointed and sealed her acupuncture point to calm her down. Then, he took her hands and sat her down face to face. Their palms were in touch to connect the flow of his spiritual power into her body. His spiritual power slowly entered her circulation and reached out to her abdomen. The internals of her abdomen was as cold as ice. Her organs were cramping in pain. His spiritual power was a stream of warmth to cure this effect. It entered her abdomen and started to demonstrate its warming effects. Soon, the cramps around her abdomen started to ease and gradually disappeared. A few moments later, Di Fui finally let go of her hand and removed the seal on her acupuncture point. "How are you feeling now?" he asked. "I'm feeling better. Thank you." Gu Shijiu heaved a gentle sigh of relief and rose. As the pain had been going on for too long, her body was still weak. She quickly moved around to exercise her cramped muscles. Di Fui continued to observe her pale face. "How long have you been in pain? Why didn't you say anything earlier?" Gu Shijiu shook her head firmly. "There is no need. There is no need? Should we wait until you had fainted to make it sound more necessary?" Gu Shijiu looked at him fixedly. She continued with a half-smile. "Are you concerned with my well-being?" Di Fui disregarded her glare and said nonchalantly, "You are overthinking. As I said, we are now a team. We are doing this for the same goal." Chapter 1671. Since we are a team, it is preferable that we are both at our best. We should not be a burden to each other in times of danger. You were suffering from great pain, but you chose to say nothing. If you passed out at a disastrous point of crisis, you would become the biggest burden. Gu Shijiu answered with a smile, "I am not overthinking, so there is no need for you to explain everything so eagerly. I will not blame you for anything. You can rest assured that you are only a team member to me, nothing more. When the time comes, you will save the one you care for, and I will do the same. I will not put you into any trouble or become your burden." She must have been crazy to ask if he still cared. By now, she reminded herself not to overthink to prevent any further disappointments. She took a look around, as the place seemed a little familiar. She did not think twice about it, and proceeded to stretch even more. She wanted to return to the underground waterway. Di Fui pulled her back and prohibited her from entering the waterway. "You should not dive into the waterway again. Your body is too weak to endure the underground cold." Gu Shijiu frowned in bewilderment. "Should we work separately? You continue to track the traces in the waterway and update me if you find anything, all right?" Her suggestion was a good one. Di Fui observed the surrounding and had one of his flashes of inspiration. The redness of the plum flowers was unusually bright. In the dim light of the night, the flowers seemed to associate with the forces of evil. He plucked a flower and put it closer to his nose to smell its scent. Within its delicate fragrance, he found something more, something that resembled the smell of blood. The bloody scent was rather weak. Had Di Fui not brought it closer, he would not realize it. Perhaps the criminal's lair is somewhere close by. Di Fui slowly said, "Be careful." Gu Shijiu was hit by a sudden realization, too. The plum garden was the one she had been to before. It was 110 miles away from the capital city of the Facian Kingdom. When she was last here, she could tell that the redness in these flowers was rather odd. Before she could observe the flowers, long-sized news came and distracted her. The plum garden was vast. The entire area was a few hundred acres. Within the garden, the flowers were arranged in a crisscross pattern. The small trail spread out in all directions. It was the plum blossom, so the visitors came in an endless stream to see the flowers. The footprints of the garden were all over the ground with no semblance of order. It would be very difficult for them to track the footprints. "Wait here. I will go and take a look." Di Fui turned around and went into the waterway. A few moments later, he resurfaced. This is the final stop of their track. There are no more traces in the water. Gu Shijiu leaped from the top of the plum tree. The plum trees here seem to associate with the forces of evil. There's something odd about the place here. Maybe they're close by. The place seemed completely fine during the day, other than the usual brightness of the red flowers. However, it was different during the night. Bit by bit, the sense of evil started to show. Gu Shijio was careful enough to notice the difference. She plucked a twig of plum flower, and a wisp of red brilliance oozed out at the point of the wreckage. The smell of blood grew stronger. Gu Zijia's heart sank. Was it possible that the place was irrigated by blood? Was Mo Zhao's hiding place nearby? Was Lan Jingyi forced to kidnap Little Fox? Or did she volunteer to work with Mo Zhao? Was Little Fox still alive? Gu Shijio was very worried about Little Fox's safety. They're still alive. Di Fui seemed to notice her concern, so he quickly reassured her. Gu Shijio was relieved. Lan Jingyi is the culprit. She surely will not be harmed. I'm only worried about Little Fox. I need to get her back safely. If anything happens to her, I will never forgive Lan Jingyi. She finished her sentence with a firm, icy tone. Chapter 1672. Lan Jingyi is the sister of Jinka. Jinka loved her the most when she was alive. I made a promise to take care of both her brother and sister for the rest of their lives. Di Fui continued in an icy tone. Gu Shijio, you'd better dismiss the idea of harming her. Gu Zijia's face was pale, but she still responded with a smile. No one can ever scheme against my friend and expect no revenge from me. What if I insist that I will avenge her? Di Fui turned around. I will, in turn, insist that your friends will be harmed as well. He ignored her and went straight into the garden to look for their traces. Gu Shijio stood very still. Her fingers were trembling by her side. She would not mind if it were her that he threatened to harm. She was ready to risk everything. Furthermore, she was curious about what he would do to her. Would he kill her? Would he imprison her? Would he even confine her? She did not care as long as he hurt her. However, it was her friends that he targeted. He was a man of his words. What else could she do? Her willful acts of damage had got Long Sai into trouble once. Because of her, his spiritual power had been significantly reduced. He even lost his status as a Heaven's Gift disciple. Would she get the rest of her friends into other trouble? Therefore, she could never take her revenge against Lan Jingyi. Even if Little Fox was dead, she could not make Lan Jingyi pay for her death. She could not tell how she truly felt right now, whether it was frustration, grief, or helplessness. The thought filled her with indignation. She took a deep breath, trying to suppress her resentment over his threat. She told herself that there was nothing to be mad or sad about. It was normal for this stranger to come and threaten her, for he cared about the safety of his lover's sister more than anyone else. He was merely a stranger to her after all. Hence, she tried to adjust her emotional state to calm down. Then, she decided to continue her search in the plum garden. Suddenly, the directed audio spell started to flicker at her waist. It was Yin Shun. He was anxiously waiting for her news. Along the journey, Gu Shijio would stay in touch with Yin Shun every time she resurfaced to catch a breath. She would update him of her current location for him to follow the path. Since they both agreed that there must be something wrong with the plum garden, she decided to call her friends and ask them for their assistance. Once everything had been carefully arranged, she turned and saw Di Fui standing not too far away, seemingly waiting for her. She looked away and wanted to check out other places. This place is highly dangerous. You and I should go together. Di Fui approached her. That is unnecessary. We should do it separately. It will be faster. Gu Shijio turned around and decided to leave. Di Fui held on her sleeve tightly. Don't be silly. Screech. There was a sound of clothes being ripped. It was Gu Zijia's sleeves. She took a step back and answered icily. Di Fui, when did you become so protective over women? The plum garden is vast. It will be much faster if we search for them separately. Are you still mad at me? I am not showing any bias towards Lan Jingyi. I have checked the traces along the way and am sure that someone has been controlling her. It is not her intention to kidnap Lan Weihu. Haha, I understand. Don't worry. I will not harm her. She interrupted him with a sneer. Having nothing more to talk about with him, she teleported and disappeared. She remembered a quote from the modern era, saying how open-hearted and graceful it was for a modern couple to befriend one another after they broke up, even knowing the other half had betrayed them. They could even visit one another occasionally, as if they were still close friends. She felt that it was the right thing to do back then, but it all seemed like complete nonsense now. If one could still forgive and treat his or her ex-lover like a friend, even after a betrayal, it was surely not true love that they had been through. In her case, she could never treat Di Fui as a friend ever again. It was either love or complete isolation from one another. Chapter 1673, Gu Shizhou would rather have no dealings with Di Fui. He was the last person she wanted to see. She shook her head to dismiss all the negative thoughts that were creeping in her mind and becoming overwhelming. Then, she started to study the plum garden. She floated in the sky to better observe the structure of the garden. Within the vast fiery redness, many trails were intertwining with one another as a result of the swarming crowds from before. The plum garden was huge and vast. Seemingly, it was all in a muddle, like an ordinary plum garden without any specific array formation. She focused on the small passages in the garden that appeared to be like a spider web formation from the top view. Some of the trails were a result of the footprints from people who had walked through earlier. Others were there intentionally, especially the ones on the periphery of the garden. They were mostly man-made. A sudden realization hit her. The plum garden was unusually huge and wide. Most people that came for the flowers would only stay around the periphery of the garden and avoid getting too deep into the garden. The deepest parts of the garden should not be covered with so many trails that were left behind. Was it a trap that was set by the enemy? She took another long look at the structure. Somehow, these trails resembled the shape of a spiderweb. At the center, there was a red plum tree that seemed to be strangely wicked. The appearance of the red plum tree was rather odd, as the branches extended to all directions that resembled the shape of a giant red spiderweb. Moreover, the color of the plum flower was even brighter than the flowers from other trees. Indeed, the tree was hidden amongst all other trees, each with their own branches that resembled different shapes of different animals. As a result, the tree became less eye-catching. Gu Shizhou was very quick to observe its oddness. It was not easy, even for an expert, to tell the difference. Perhaps the tree was the key. Before she proceeded, the directed audio spell started to flicker again. It was Yin Shun, who was requesting for her current location. Gu Shizhou gave him her coordinates. Soon, Yin Shun and Lan Yu were both present. Gu Shizhou had not expected to see Lan Yu. She gave him a harsh look. Lan Yu was a smart man. He immediately understood what Gu Shizhou was thinking and sighed. "She is my fiancée. I will save her no matter what." The word fiancé came as an annoyance to Yin Shun, but he was not in the mood to argue with Lan Yu at the moment. He had decided never to let Little Fox go. After the rescue, he would not let her leave his side ever again, regardless of her virginity. Little Fox was his and only his. He would not give in anymore, nor would he hold back. If she were out of keeping with his parents, he would travel the world with her and never go home again. As for her marriage with Lan Yu, he would do everything he could to break it off, even if he had to risk his life. Gu Shizhou briefed them about her discovery. Yin Shan was very anxious. After taking a look at the tree, he immediately wanted to approach it. Gu Shizhou quickly stopped him and warned, "Wait a second." Lan Yu sighed. "Brother Yin, you should not be so eager. If the tree is the critical point of the array, there has to be some major trick or trap. Your rash action is going to cost you your life. Even if your kung fu is strong enough to help you survive, your impetuous decision will alarm those in the array formation. It will be even more difficult for our rescue mission." Yin Shun heaved a sigh of relief. He knew he was too impulsive, a result of his immense anxiety. He had never seen such a vast array formation. How should it be decoded? He turned around to look at Lan Yu. "What do you think about it?" Lan Yu smelled the scent of the plum flower that he just plucked. Shortly, he answered, "We wait." "Wait? What are we waiting for? If this is the place where they are imprisoned, there must be an entry for people to enter and exit the formation. We wait for one of them to come out, drug him, and take his identity to sneak into the place." Chapter 1674 Lan Yu's solution seemed like a conservative but a safe idea. However, it was already late at night. No one would leave the place to go anywhere else at this time. Were the three of them going to wait until the next day? Moreover, if everything in the formation were complete, none of them would leave the place for a couple of weeks. Were they going to wait that long? They were desperate. How could they wait so long? Yin Shan glared fiercely at him as he spoke. We can wait, but little fox cannot wait anymore. Lan Yu sighed. She has been kidnapped for 2 days. If they were going to harm her, they would have done it already. There is not much difference in how long we wait. He was not entirely hopeful for little fox to return safely and in perfect health. He would do everything he ought to do in this rescue mission and leave the rest to God's will. Yinshin decided to ignore him and turned to Gu Shijio for more suggestions instead. Shijio, what do you think? Gu Shijio looked at the mussel that was now close by her side. Take out the hidden rabbit in your mouth. The mussel was guided here by Yin Shun. Upon hearing her instruction, it was perplexed and asked, Master, how did you know that I have hidden a rabbit in my mouth? The mussel had a habit of storing food, as it was always worried that it would get stranded somewhere with no food. Everywhere it went, it would eat what it caught. If the food were too much, it would keep it in its mouth as food storage. In its shell, there were 3 rabbits, 2 chickens, and even a small boar. As its master, Gu Shijio certainly knew its habit. Moreover, she could hear the scratching of the rabbit in its shells, desperately calling for an escape. The mussel was a little reluctant to let go of its attractive food from storage. It continued to discuss with Gu Shijio. Master, after letting it out, can I swallow it back? Gu Shijio nodded in agreement. You can go after it if there is no danger. The mussel was relieved. It agreed to her, as long as it was allowed to take the rabbit back. Its prey should never be allowed to escape. It passed the rabbit to Gu Shijio. She took it and lowered her position to the point where she was close enough to throw the rabbit towards a tree. Bam! The rabbit fell onto the crown of the big tree. The rabbit was still recovering from the impact it had just suffered. With a quick leap, it wanted to run away, but its limbs felt as though they were entangled. It struggled a little. Soon, all of them witnessed something that completely blew their minds. Countless tiny roots emerged and tightened around the body of the rabbit. The roots then bound deeply into its flesh. The roots then drank up the moisture in its flesh. The rabbit was dried out and mummified almost instantaneously. Yin Shun was utterly shocked. Lan Yu was in disbelief too. Strange. The tree consumes living things. In the blink of an eye, the rabbit disappeared, leaving no traces of its flesh and bones behind. It was as though it was never there. Yin Shun was still recovering from a shock, as he had not expected the tree to be so ferocious. If he made the first contact earlier, he would end up with the same fate as the rabbit. The mussel felt sorry for its food. The rabbit was its storage. Before it had time to mourn for its dead rabbit, Gu Shijio reached out to it and asked for more. Take the chicken out as well. The mussel did not know what to say. Gu Shijio tapped on its shell lightly and comforted it. Listen to me. I will grill an entire lamb for you in the future. The mussel was immediately delighted. Grilled lamb was one of Gu Zhijia's best dishes, and it was also the mussel's favorite. Chapter 1675 eagerly. It presented one of its hidden chickens to Gu Shijio. Master, this is for you. Is one enough? If not, I still have one more. Gu Shijio threw the chicken toward the tree right away. The chicken seemed to have sensed the danger around it. When its claw touched the crown of the tree, it immediately spread its wings and sprang into the air. It was all too late. The petals on the tree fluttered in the night breeze before wrapping the entire body of the chicken, and the hopeless prey stopped moving instantly. A few moments later, the entangled petals dispersed into the air and fell back onto the tree. The chicken was nowhere to be seen. It seemed that these petals fed on blood as well. Lan Yu took a look at the twig of the plum flower in his hand. A shiver ran over his body, and he threw the flower away at once. This is the array formation of spiderweb in bloody plum. A sudden voice emerged, taking Lan Yu by surprise. He turned around and saw Di Fui standing behind them. He was also looking at the plum tree fixedly. Lan Yu was relieved to see him, as he had just wondered where the mighty man was. He did not expect his sudden emergence. He seemed to be working separately from Gu Shijio. Lan Yu's news was accurate, so he knew that Di Fui and Gu Shijio had parted on separate ways and that their relationship had ended. Wisely, he chose not to ask anything related to their relationship. What do you know about the array formation of spiderweb in Bloody Plum? Lan Yu is a very keen learner. Can you see the trails in the garden? They are not actually trails, but the gaseous pulse of the formation. After the bloody plum tree feeds on animal blood, it will draw nourishment from the center to the surrounding plum trees through the connecting pulse. Because of the bloody diet, the flowers are unusually bright-colored and beautiful. The rest of the plum trees will, in turn, absorb the essence of the sun and the moon. They will provide nutrients to the bloody plum tree to make it grow stronger. I finally know why these flowers are exceptionally gorgeous. But why do they have to create such a massive array formation to support the growth of the bloody plum tree? What will it do when it matures? Di Fui shook his head. This is a mechanism-operated array formation, which is usually closed. The people can still visit, as long as no impediment shall arise. No one can tell any difference between it. If anyone tries to break into the formation, the bloody plum tree will be immediately triggered. Every tree in the entire plum garden will come alive like a web. They will behave like the center bloody plum tree, catching and eating humans alive. As vast as you can see, anyone who gets trapped in the garden will barely make it out alive. He had not expected the existence of such a vicious array formation in the world. Hence, Lan Yu was enlightened. He then turned to give Yin Chen a look. Luckily, you did not attack it earlier, or else we would all become their buffet. The plum garden has been here for a very long time. I have not heard about anything wicked about it before. He continued to observe the bloody plum flower. Di Fui slowly explained, the bloody plum tree looks no different from a regular plum tree during the day. Moreover, it only started to exist in the later stage of the establishment, in the deepest part of the plum garden. Its blood-feeding behavior can only be seen at midnight. Anyone can walk past it during the day, and nothing will happen, so no one will ever notice it. Lan Yu finally understood. Yinshin was not very interested in the history of the plum garden, for it was not at all what he cared about. How shall we break the formation? Di Fui looked at Gu Shijio instead. Isn't she trying to break the formation? Lan Yu and Yinshin turned their curious eyes to Gu Shijio. She was trying to persuade the mussel to give up all of its food. The mussel was reluctant to, but could not go against the will of its master. Heartbroken, it passed all of its food storage to Gu Shijio one by one. Chapter 1676, Gu Shijio threw the animals at the bloody plum tree one by one. As usual, the bloody plum tree sucked the animals dry in no time. The mussel clenched its fist at the sight of what it witnessed. The bloody tree was a bigger eater than it was. Lan Yu did not quite understand. Gu Shijio was feeding the tree. How was she going to break the formation? The array formation is an ancient evil formation. It is not that I cannot break it, but if we do it the usual way, the man behind the vicious plan will be alarmed. By the time we break in, Lan Weihu and Lan Jingyi will probably be long gone. Di Fui continued to explain. Yin Chen looked at Gu Shijio in bewilderment. Is she trying to do it unusually? Once the tree is well fed, does it mean that the door will open itself? Soon, there was a little movement on the ground. The bloody plum tree shifted a little, and a huge hole emerged at the bottom of the trunk. Lan Yu was utterly shocked. He could not believe what had just happened before his eyes. He thought that the tree would open its entrance automatically once it was well fed. Shortly, his speculation was proven wrong. Two men emerged from the hole. They looked like scholars from the way they dressed. They did not seem like they had just emerged from the ground. In fact, they looked more like two scholars who were just about to leave the examination hall. They observed their surroundings, and one of them noticed something. What's going on? The tree is unusually active tonight. Where did all the food come from? The other, who was equally confused, shook his head. Let's check the perimeter, so our master will not be distracted from his work. The two of them quickly took a detour around the plum garden. They did not forget to seal the entrance before they left, so the bloody plum tree returned to its normal appearance. Gu Shijio and the rest of them stayed floating in the air within the wizardry barrier that had been set up by Di Fui so that they could stay unnoticed. Yin Shun turned to look at Gu Shijio with eyes full of admiration, for she could always find the solution. Both the men took a quick look around the plum garden. Soon, they found a wild boar and a wolf within the woods. One of the men responded, "Actually, there is nothing odd. Our master has once said that the plum garden would release a unique scent to attract praise. The scent is probably stronger tonight." While they were chatting, they also performed a special technique to open the sealed entrance. The hole appeared again, and the staircases emerged to guide them in. Also, they did not forget to seal the hole again to return the tree to its usual appearance. Many staircases led them deep into the ground. On both sides of the walls, many candles were flickering in the dark. These unique candles would not be extinguished even after burning for 1,000 years. While they were walking, one of the men had a shiver running through his body. "Strange. I have a feeling that someone is following us," he confessed. His companion took a quick look around and saw nothing. Relieved, he answered, "There is nothing to be worried about. Who could have possibly entered this place? We have always been very careful when opening and closing the entrance. Forget about humans. I do not think that even a fly can make its way in. Don't you overthink." The man scratched his head in bewilderment. "I also do not think that others could make their way in." He sighed. "Maybe it is because there have been too many deaths around, so I keep thinking that their spirits stay behind everywhere." He continued to walk while he talked. After a while, he realized that his companion was far behind. He turned around and waited for him. "Why are you so slow all of a sudden?" he complained. Chapter 1677. Let's go quickly. It is the Lord's birthday tonight. We cannot have any mishaps. We need to keep watch. The Lord is going to break free. Am I right? His companion was speaking with a sense of humor. "Yeah, 2 pretty ladies are going to be devoured by the Lord for training purposes. What a waste. It would be better if he passes them to his brothers to play for a bit before that." "You are right." "Oh, right. The Lord will not allow others to disturb him while he satisfies his lust. Who is keeping watch of where the Lord is at? Should we go over and give them a warning to make sure they do not disturb our Lord?" His companion suggested. That person broke into a laugh. "There are many proficient practitioners keeping watch of where the Lord is at. Anyone is more proficient than either one of us. Everyone is utterly aware and will not disturb our Lord. There is no need for you who keep watch on the gates to warn them." His companion sighed. "Actually, I am excited to see how he would break free. Even if I could not gain any benefit, having a look would be good as well." His companion hit his shoulder. "What is there to see? The Lord is at the Bloody Pond. That is an extremely ghastly place, not where we could approach. We had better stay put and keep watch of the gates. Let us wait until our Lord builds up his influence. Then, both of us would be founding heroes. We would be generously appreciated. It would not be hard to see some pretty ladies then, right? There is no need to be tempted by the 2 ladies right now." His companion threw him a glance. "You are right. That is indubitably right, since I am a few years older than you and can understand the situation better." He lifted his arm to place it over his companion's shoulder. "If you follow me later on, I will teach you." He was forced to stop his sentence halfway. Before he could put his arm over his companion's shoulder, his waist suddenly cramped. His eyes suddenly dilated as he stared at his companion. He opened his mouth slightly, as if going to cry out something, but no sound could be heard. His body limped, and he was no longer breathing. In the dark, a person emerged. He bent down and wanted to snatch the overcoat of the dead man. "Hold on." The companion lifted his sleeves, and the overcoat automatically left the dead body. A streak of light flashed across, and the overcoat became utterly clean. Then it was sent over. The person in the dark was, in fact, Gu Shijio, and the person who attacked one of the men earlier was Di Fui. He was good at acting and disguising himself. Gu Shijio remained silent, took over the clothing, and put it on herself. Then, she immediately used her spiritual power to alter her facial features and her height. A moment later, she was no different from the person who had died. When the two gatekeepers came in earlier, Di Fui and her immediately made themselves invisible to go in. It was utterly well planned. Gu Shijio did not want to work with him initially, but it was the only way that both of them could enter. Seeing how keen Di Fui was to enter, he was definitely doing it for Lan Jingyi. Gu Shijio suspected that Di Fui was most likely still afraid that under her rash emotions she would take revenge on Lan Jingyi. Fortunately, she would not do such stupid things and cause trouble for her friend. At least not before she acquired the ability to. After collecting herself together, she immediately rushed inside. The person in the dark would attack Lan Weihu that night. She needed to rush over and save her. Lan Weihu looked at what was happening underneath her feet with trepidation. Chapter 1678. Underneath Lan Weihu was a bloody pond that was gushing with blood. Many skulls were dancing within the savage sea. Her body was chained up by 4 thin silver chains as she was suspended in the air. The chains were not locking her limbs, but instead passed through her humerus and ankle bones. It was excruciating. Her small face was pale, and her forehead was full of sweat. Drop by drop collected at her chin, and from her chin, they dropped like puddles of sweat. Within the vast emptiness of the skull's eyes were wicked red lights, as if staring at Lan Weihu, thinking of jumping out and devouring her blood and flesh for a couple of times. The white teeth of the skulls were about to brush themselves against the sole of her feet. She bit her lips tightly to prevent herself from letting out a cry. She was in pain and in fear. However, no one was there to save her. To be punished alive like that, every second was tormenting. It would be better if she died. Had it not been for the uneasiness in her heart, Lan Weihu would have killed herself by biting off her tongue. Dying would be great. Dying would mean no more pain, but she had not been able to meet Yin Shun. She had not seen him for almost a year. How dearly she missed him. Since they last bid goodbye, she had not been able to meet or contact him. To her dismay, Yin Shun did not contact her either. Perhaps he had let her go. The longer they spent apart, the more she missed him. Especially now that the wedding was near. She longed for him even more and grew scared. She never thought that the maidservant who had always been by her side would set her up in a trap, forcing her to leave a dangerous shed only to be dropped into a tiger's claws. Brother Yin Che, she muttered to herself. Do you not want me anymore? Of course he does not want you anymore. From the corner emerged a woman's voice that was full of rage. Any man would not like such a feeble girl like you. Had it not been for your ancestry, why would the king of the Blue Fox family marry you? How are you compatible to be a national master? What is worse is your fascination for such an ordinary man like Yin Shun. You left the prestigious position of the queen of the Blue Fox family, and instead chose to run away with a man likened to dust. Shut up. Lan Weihu looked towards the origin of the voice with a pair of fiercely looking eyes. I would not allow you to disparage my brother Yin Shun. He is the best man in the world. Nothing likened to any dust you who conspired with the bad guys are the real dust. Above the pond was a floating round and translucent bloody ball. Within the ball was a young lady. The young lady had a head of seaweed-like long hair, with her clothes covering her body. Her upper body was no different from a normal young lady, but her lower body had a green-colored fishtail. The young lady did not have any chains around herself, but she was curled up and trapped in the bloody ball. She was a mermaid. Lan Weihu was furious looking at the mermaid. She wanted to jump down and slash her with a knife. After Lan Weihu was taken out of the Blue Fox family by her maidservant, the person who greeted them was that young mermaid lady. She was alert enough to smell something fishy. However, as she was about to turn back and run, the mermaid immediately rushed towards her and grabbed her. With the help of the maidservant, Lan Weihu was defeated, and she fell into the hands of the mermaid. That mermaid kept her confined within the bottom of a water ball. Chapter 1679. The mermaid kept her confined within a water ball in the underground and only pulled her back to the surface right before she was about to suffocate to death. Before she could even take a few deep breaths, she was again drawn back down to the bottom of the underground again. All the while Lan Wei begged her and scolded her, but that mermaid appeared to be oblivious. She was like a lifeless robot dragging her all the way here. It was only when they reached here that Lan Weihu could finally breathe properly, but she was put through a series of torturous events now. The people here did not wait to protrude her humerus and hang her in the air, not knowing the reason why they were even doing so. However, the mermaid was not treated well either. After coming here, she was trapped in the bloody pond, unable to free herself. Soon after, the mermaid was back to her senses and became equally terrified as Lan Weihu. Both of them were in the same boat, but the mermaid made it seem like she was a bigger deal than Lan Weihu. This infuriated the latter. Besides that, who knew where the young lady got a sense of superiority from? As she cried out, "You foolish humans," Lan Weihu was tempted to sew her mouth up. Lan Weihu, stop thinking about the useless brother you have. He will not come and save you. Even if he came, the Lord here is mighty. It would be foolish to think that any human could be on par with him. Death awaited any such fool. Stop expecting him to come. Just wait for your death. Lan Weihu was furious. Are you not trapped in here as well? Are you not going to suffer the same fate as me? I am not in the same condition as you. Brother Huang will save me, and he would not let anything happen to me. However, Brother Huang only minds his own business. Had he come, he would only save me, and would not care about a fox like you. Lan Weihu ridiculed. Brother Huang is a nobody. Shijie will come and save me. She is smart and powerful, more trustable than your brother Huang. There is no one she cannot find. She will be able to find this place. The young mermaid was filled with rage. How daring! How could you call brother Huang a nobody? His position is more prestigious than Gu Zijius. His ability is much greater than that of hers. Gu Shijie could never compare to him. The two of them exchanged their points as they quarreled. It was all without meaning. Lan Weihu was easily infuriated, and the young mermaid was only trying to hide her fear of the future. Attacking Lan Weihu was her way of fortifying her confidence. Who is this brother Huang you speak of? A voice intruded their conversation. The young mermaid replied, He is my brother-in-law and the lord of the land. It was when she finished her sentence that she realized something was wrong. She looked up and noticed that the wall cracked into a door and a man in blue entered. The man in blue was handsome. He had a rather stolid beauty, but within his actions was a sense of promiscuity. His lips curved slightly upwards while looking at the two of them, almost having an evil taste to it. Lan Weihu had been trapped for so long, but this was her first time seeing someone else. She looked at him with a vigilant eye. Who are you? The young mermaid's countenance changed. You are? The young mermaid was Lan Jingyi. She once followed her brother as he slipped into the palace, where she had seen the new emperor of the Feishan kingdom. The man standing before her eyes looked like that emperor. However, she only observed from afar that time, and a group of maidservants surrounded the emperor at the time. Chapter 1680. The emperor was wearing a majestic yellow robe and looked extremely dignified. His aura seemed different from the man right before her now, so she could not be sure whether he was the same person. The man in blue sighed softly. Who do you think I am? His voice was amiable, like a gentleman. Are you part of the royals? Which prince are you? Lan Jingyi guessed, due to his similar appearance. The man in blue looked up and smiled. He then placed his palm together lightly. Why do you not suspect that I am the emperor? Lan Jingyi was speechless. The man in blue looked at her pretty face that had turned pale. He then asked, surprised. Lan Jingyi took in a breath of air as she continued. If you're the emperor, then are you here to save us? Under whose request are you here? The man in blue sighed. You are such a naive child. I have tried so hard to capture you. Why would I be here to save you? Do you think I am that free? The person behind everything was, in fact, the emperor of the Feishan kingdom. Lan Jingyi's countenance changed. Why did you capture us? Release me now, or else Brother Huang will not forgive you or show you any mercy. The man in blue laughed. So the Lord is your Brother Huang. Now, that is interesting. He paced slowly towards the bloody ball, looking at Lan Jingyi, who was trapped within the ball. Suddenly, he hit the wall of the cave with his palm. I have heard that a drum made of the skin of a mermaid would produce a sound so loud that it could be heard 1,000 miles away. Is that true? Lan Jingyi was speechless. The man in blue examined her a little more. Just like most mermaids, your skin looks good. Using it to make a drum would be a waste. It would be better to use it for clothing. I can sew some pretty cloud-like patterns on it. Then it would be pretty and protective. Lan Jingyi's face turned pale. This joke is not funny. My brother Huang. Still thinking of using your brother Huang to threaten me? If you did not mention him, I would have made it all easy, but since you have mentioned him, that made me feel quite uncomfortable. I would have to give you a taste of what I could do then. A short knife, as thin as a cricket's wing, emerged from the man's sleeve. Instantly, it shattered the bloody ball. Lan Jingyi screamed and rolled down from the bloody ball. As she was about to fall into the pond, a streak of silver strands emerged from the palm of the man in blue, got hold of Lan Jingyi's waist, and dropped her by the edge of the pond. Lan Jingyi was still unable to gather herself. Although she did not fall into the bloody, gushing water, a part of her clothes caught the blood, and it was like sulfuric acid. As her clothes had been corroded to pieces, the skulls in the bloody pool began to shriek and jump more frantically. As Lan Jingyi wanted to get on her feet after landing on the ground, the man in blue placed his foot on her chest, preventing her from getting up. The man in blue was obnoxious. He did not only step on her, but used his toes to inflict more pain. Lan Jingyi was embarrassed because of the location of his toes. She screamed, "You pervert! Let go of me." This is considered perverted? Although the action of the man in blue was rather perverse, his handsome face made him look like an open-minded man. I have more perverted acts. Can you think of any of them? As he was talking, he used a sharp knife in his palm to slit open her placket. Chapter 1681. Lan Jingyi's attire was specially made to be able to withstand standard attacks. However, its placket was now slit by him, and it was torn apart. Lan Jingyi's body was alluring, curvy, and with an ample bosom. Now that her clothing was torn, a silver inner wear was visible. No love birds or lotus flowers of any kind were seen on the apron, but instead, it was the image of a person. The person had black hair and white clothes, just like the Lord. The man in blue examined the figure on her apron and smiled. Is that brother Huang you have sewn on your inner wear? Having your brother-in-law sewn on your apron, little mermaid. It looks like you like him, but does he know how you feel towards him? Oh well, since you like him so much, when I remove your skin, I could make it into a puppet doll and put on your inner wear before I send it as a gift to him. His smile was amiable, and his voice gentle, but what he said was eerie and terrifying. Lan Jingyi's entire body shivered. She wanted to move, but could not. She wanted to curse, but did not dare. Her pretty face was pale and at a loss for words. You cannot do this to me. I am the princess of the kingdom of the mermaids. If you kill me, Brother Huang will not leave this unavenged, and the mermaid tribe will not forgive you. Are you willing to risk that just for the sake of a mermaid skin? Let go of me, and I will repay your kindness later on. Pay me? How? The man in blue liked to play cat and mice games. He had already had a plan, but still wanted to play with her. He wanted to see her desperately begging before him. Before any response was given, he used the thin knife to slit the ribbon of her inner wear. You would like to give me yourself? The frigid tip of the knife touched Lan Jingyi's skin, as she had goosebumps all over. She was so shocked that she saw blackness before her eyes. You, look at what I have done for you. Let go of me, What have you done for me? I have brought in Lan Weihu for you. That was in fact a small deed of yours, but had you not been affected by my spell, why would you be so obedient? Instantly, Lan Jingyi's inner wear was torn apart and slipped down from her chest. Hence, her provocative body was entirely out in the open before the eyes of the man in blue. Lan Jingyi panicked. She wanted to curl herself up, but 3 streaks of cold light emerged from the sleeves of the man in blue. Lan Jingyi gave off an ear-piercing scream. The 3 streaks were 3 long nails which pressed on a Lan Jingyi's hands and her tail. She was nailed to the ground alive. That was a very humiliating posture. Her fresh blood was like a stream as it flowed out from where the long nails had pierced. There was a sense of bloody beauty that moment. Lan Jingyi was in so much pain that her face grew pale. She had never been through such punishment throughout her life. The long nails that pierced through her body gave her pain in her bones, making her want to roll about and to struggle. Unfortunately, moving even a little would make it hurt 10 times more. Her clothes were torn, and her snow-colored body was lying within the pile of torn cloth. Fresh blood was flowing down from her wrists. She looked like a human fish. Her upper body was snow-colored, making her look like a 28-years-old young lady. Her lower body was pale green, full of glittery scales. Chapter 16, 82 droplets of sweat emerged from her skin and scales. Like magic, the droplets condensed into pearls, each crystal clear, rolling on the ground. Mermaid sweat turns into pearls. Seems like this theory is not wrong after all. The man in blue laughed, looking at Lan Jingyi, who was in so much pain that even her lips were trembling. Why did you not tear up? A mermaid's tears are what I need. Lan Jingyi was in so much pain that she even thought of killing herself. But it was hard for a mermaid to tear up. She was no different. It is not that she did not think of crying. She could not. The man in blue looked at her for a moment and sighed. Seems like this torture is not enough. He moved his fingers and the thin tip of his knife. Lan Jingyi cried out in pain as a huge scale was ripped off her by the man in blue. Ripping off her scales was more painful than pricking at her bones. Lan Jingyi was in so much pain that she shuddered, not only sweating profusely, but finally, tears emerged from her eyes. She blinked a little, and small teardrops fell to the ground into a spherical-like pearl. This one sparkled much better than her sweat. The man in blue lifted his fingers, and a mermaid's tears dropped into his palm. He examined it and shook his head. Too small. He then turned his attention back towards Lan Jingyi. He sighed. You are so stingy, not even wanting to cry larger droplets of tears. I will need to force it out myself. He wielded the thin knife in his hand, and a couple of scales were ripped off this time. She was like a fish out of the water, resisting it for a while. Finally, big droplets of tears rolled down. Within her tears were blood. A mermaid's tears were half red and half transparent, like a pretty cat's eye, rolling about on the ground. Lan Weihu was in unspeakable terror, just looking at it from above. Although she hated Lan Jingyi and wanted to cut her with a knife, looking at the scene before her made her think twice. The man in blue looked like a gentleman, but what he did made him as cruel as a devil. That made Lan Weihu gather insight into the base level of a person's cruelty. That mermaid had helped the man in blue with such a great deed, and he instead treated her so cruelly. She could only expect worse from him later on. Lan Weihu was terrified as well. Her eyes were dilated as she stared at the man in blue. If a cold gaze could kill someone, the man in blue had already been killed by Lan Weihu. The man in blue held the mermaid's tears in his palms and said softly, still not enough. He bowed his head down and looked at Lan Jingyi, who almost passed out. I will rip 2 more scales off your body. Cry as you wish. The tip of a knife touched her scales, and Lan Jingyi was so scared that she shrieked. I will cry. Stop ripping. I will do it. She cried out all the tears she had throughout her life. The man in blue had collected a heap of mermaid's tears, and finally he was satisfied. Then, a pair of sparkling eyes turned towards Lan Weihu, who was still suspended in the air. Lan Weihu could feel her hair standing on its ends. She cried in a fury. You can kill me, but please do not humiliate me. Just kill me if you want to, or torture me until I cry. The man in blue sighed. Such a charming young lady like you. How could I bear to let you cry? A mermaid's tears are precious, but those that belong to you, little fox, are not valuable at all. Lan Weihu looked at him warily. Then what do you want? Chapter 1683 Lan Weihu looked at him in fear. What do you want to do to me? I don't think you want me to just watch you torture people, right? The blue-shirted young man gently said, Of course not. I'm not free to do so. However, this mermaid has been humiliating you, so I tortured her in front of you to avenge you. You should feel happy and comforted. I'm not. You are such an unappreciative girl. The blue-shirted young man shook his head as he spoke. I took revenge for you because of Shijio and wanted you to be happy. However, I did not know that you are so unappreciative. What a waste of my effort. If you're good to me, you should let me go. It is not possible. It was so hard for me to get you here. Why do you want me? I want to borrow something from you. I was afraid that you would not want to lend it to me, so I had to catch you first in order for us to have a proper discussion about it. Lan Weihu was speechless. She asked, What is it? The blood of your heart. Lan Weihu's face turned pale. It turned out that this bastard wanted her life. It was even worse than torturing Lan Jingyi. The blue-shirted young man looked at her pale little face. Are you terrified now? Don't worry. I am still a gentleman. You're the best friend of the girl I like. I will not kill you. Lan Weihu glared at him angrily. How could he take her blood from her heart without killing her? The blue-shirted man turned over his palm, and there was a needle there. This needle was as sharp and thick as the needle used to knit sweaters. It was about a foot long, and it was now sparkling, which made people feel frightened. Did you see this? I'm going to stab this into the vein in your heart, and your blood will flow out along this needle. Don't worry. I will not take too much of your blood. I just need enough to fill up this cup. He also showed her the cup in his hand. The method he used was quite similar to the modern way to take bear bile. Gu Shijio used to tell Lan Weihu about some anecdotes from the modern world. When she heard about this, she thought that it was ruthless to the bear. Of course, she was also filled with anger. She felt that it was too cruel and also felt sad for those bears. Unfortunately, it was her turn. Nolan Weihu's face was pale. At first, she did not want to die before she saw Yin Chun, but now she would rather die. She made up her mind, and when she was about to bite her tongue, the blue-shirted young man had been prepared for it. He waved his sleeve, and Lan Weihu's acupuncture point was blocked. She could not move at all now. The blue-shirted young man reached out again, and the 4 thin chains on the Lan Weihu slid away silently. Lan Weihu was pulled to the shore of the blood pool. She could do nothing but watch as the distance between her and the blue-shirted young man was getting shorter. Help. Shijio, Yin Chun, help me. There were thin tubes that looked like human blood vessels everywhere. The thin tubes were crimson, and there was bright red blood flowing inside, making a creaking sound. This place was not really an underground building, but rather it resembled the inside of a monster. It all resembled a spider web. Every street was well connected. There were many strange-shaped buildings along the way that looked like the hive. Although the sizes were different, they were all bright red, which looked like the internal organs of animals. There were too many roads. If an unfamiliar person were leading the way and someone mistakenly entered this place, the person would be lost. Gu Shijio never expected to think that there would be such a monster underneath the beautiful plum groove. She was very impressed by the ingenuos, but also felt slightly creeped out. The pathway was not an ordinary road. It was full of white bones that were arranged orderly along the way. Chapter 1684 Gu Shijio already possessed a high spiritual power. After she utilized the eyes of yin-yang technique, she could see a lot of spirits. There were animals and human souls. These grievances floated on a path full of bones and mourned. However, they could not leave. They were stuck here. Earthbound spirits. These were the earthbound spirits. After killing these people or animals with a cruel method, their souls were not destroyed but could only float around their bones. Thus, this underground was full of grievances. Gu Shijio frowned. She was completely certain that this was the main nest of Mo Zhao. The layout of this place was the same as the underground palace below the volcano, but the style was completely different. It should take a long time to build such a place. Gu Shijio also glanced at the color of the bones along the way. There were some that were more than 10 years old, and there were others that were much newer that were only 2 years old. There were even bones that just existed in recent days. Defuyus glanced around the place and frowned. The layout of this place was like a vast array, but he could not identify it. He did not even know which direction he should go. On the other hand, Gushijio seemed to recognize the entire road. Despite being a little worried when she first came in, she was now like a frequent visitor here and continued striding forward. "Have you seen this layout before?" He could not help but ask her. Gushijio did not look at him, but explained, "This should be built by Long Fan. It is one of the nests he made with Mo Zhao." Defui had seen the two other nests made by Long Fan, but the layout here was entirely different from the other two that he had seen before. He said, "Of course I know that this is their main nest, but I'm seeing this layout for the first time. How do you know where the core array is in this array?" It was rare that he had something he did not know. If it happened in the past, Gushijio would undoubtedly be proud to share this knowledge and tease him while doing so. But now, she was not in the mood. Her voice was indifferent. "The layout here is referencing the blood flow of a python. The man behind the scenes wants to collect the blood of little fox, so they must be in the crucial area in the core array." Defui remained silent. If it was a human blood flow map, he could recognize it at a glance. However, he could not say the same about a python. "When did you study the blood flow map of a python?" Gushijio did not answer. If it was not necessary to let him know, and she was too lazy to explain it now. When she was studying medicine in the modern day, she often dissected some animals, which including pythons. Long Fan was undoubtedly a metamorphosis genius. He could build one of his nests just like an anatomical python. If a person was not familiar with the structure of a python, regardless of how skilled he or she was, they would be trapped. If Defui did not come with Gushijio, he could have taken a day and still not find the right core array. The two of them had walked for a long way, but did not see many people. Although there were only a few people here, all of them were masters. Gushijio had observed in the dark. The lowest level among these people had at least level 8 of spiritual power, and most of them were at level 9. From their conversation, Gushijio got to know that these people were formerly the people under the fake Celestial Masters Wa. After the fake Celestial Masters Wa was defeated, they were brought in by the master of this secret base. Chapter 1685, Gushijio and Defuyus were the best two people in the world to save Little Fox. They had taken out everyone they encountered at lightning speed. Those people did not even have time to scream. They could also easily camouflage themselves into groups of people to prevent anyone from noticing them. Thus, no accidents happened to them along the way. Soon, two of them were very close to the core array. At this time, there was an accident. Since the two people did not encounter any trap along the way, they loosened their attention and became careless. Defui had accidentally stepped on something, and a big hole suddenly appeared in the ground. Defui was not prepared for it, and he fell directly into the hole. Gushijio, who walked in front, heard that something was behind her. When she turned back, she could not see Defui anymore, and there was a big hole in the ground that was at least 2 feet in width. Gushijio was stunned for a few seconds and quickly rushed over. She looked down the hole. The hole was bottomless and dark, and there was a faint red flash in the depths of the hole. She saw Defui. He did not fall to the end, but his body was stuck on the wall of the hole at about 7 or 8 feet deep. As the light in the hole was dim at best, Gushijio could not see what happened to him. With his skill, if he fell into a hole, he should be able to jump up immediately. Why was he not coming up yet? She did not have time to think about it, and teleported down into the hole without hesitation. Shhhhhh. She immediately teleported to his side. Then, she cuddled him. Only after she went into the hole did she know what was going on. This hole was bizarre. From the top, it seemed to be a few feet wide. However, after Gushijio found that the hole was very narrow, it could only accommodate 2 people. She intended to fall at his side, but after she teleported down, something squeezed her and pushed her directly into his arms. Defui was initially facing the wall. As he heard her movement, he could barely turn around and just in time to catch her. This hole was bizarre and very flexible. When Di Fui fell, the walls squeezed him into place, and he could not move at all. After Gu Shijio fell, the hole could barely accommodate the two of them. Therefore, the two of them were squeezed like the sardines in a can. There was no gap between the two of them. Gu Shijio was speechless. This was the first time for the both of them to be so physically close after they broke up. It was the first time they cuddled. She could smell the scent from his body, his warmth transmitted to her body just as before. It used to be her favorite place in the world. Her heart began to hurt, and an inexplicable sourness rushed straight up to her nose. She sipped her lips and tried to struggle out of his arms. She did not want to be so close to him. However, she could not get rid of him. As she struggled, the wall of the cave continued to push both of them closer. Even if she was in his arms, she almost could not breathe properly. Her breasts were now pressed against his chest. His posture was unusually intimate. Even when both of them were still together, they were not as close as they were now. Di Fui naturally could feel the softness of her body. The pictures of their loving scenes over the years flashed in his mind. Chapter 16, 86. The desires of his body that had been forced to sleep now had signs of awakening. After all, both of them had been husband and wife for 8 years. They were very familiar with each other, so they could easily feel the difference when either party had a little movement. Gu Shijio was so close to him, so naturally she could sense the movement of his body. Her heart pumped slightly faster, and her eyes were somewhat hot. Her blood was boiling, but then she remembered his betrayal. All the emotions were blown away by the cold wind. She started to struggle out desperately. However, the harder she struggled, the tighter the squeeze was. She was very uncomfortable being squeezed, so she opened her mouth to breathe. "Don't move." Di Fui's hand was on her waist. "This is a trap, and you can't struggle out of it." Di Fui quietly used his spiritual power to forcibly push the wall behind her so that she could have a slight gap to breathe. "Do you know how to escape this trap?" Gu Shijio asked. In the dark, her skin was soft and fair. Her red lips were moist, and her eyes were shiny. Di Fui suppressed his desire to kiss her and whispered, "Be patient. Let me try something." His palm moved behind her inch by inch as he tried to explore the mechanism on the wall. Although it was only the back of his palm that touched her back, Gu Shijio could still sense the heat of his palm. She was also very uncomfortable being so close to his body. Di Fui suddenly noticed that her breathing was slightly heavy. Her face was red, and she was somewhat stunned. Finally, he recalled something, and his palm went stiff. There was a sensitive point on her back. When both of them were intimate in the past, Di Fui often pinched her at the sensitive point to make her lose her senses. "I am sorry," Di Fui whispered, and his palm tried to leave that position. Gu Shijio did not have any expression on her face, and she did not say anything. However, her red face gradually turned pale. Di Fui did not find a mechanism to switch the trap off. Gu Shijio took a deep breath and asked, "You can shrink your bones, right? I noticed that the mechanism has a slight delay. If you can quickly shrink your bones, I will use the teleportation technique to get us out immediately." This was a good suggestion. Di Fui also agreed with it. Okay. After he agreed to it, his body immediately shrank. When his size was reduced, he instantly started to fall. Gu Shijio reacted quickly to grab him. At the same time, she teleported out when the two of them were back on the ground. Gu Shijio finally heaved a sigh of relief. She unintentionally looked down and saw the miniature version of Di Fui. To make a big gap, Di Fui now looked like a child of 2 to 3 years old. At this moment, he stood on the ground and had not yet recovered to his original appearance. Although Gu Shijio had been with him for so long, this was the first time she saw him in this appearance. The small body was less than 1 meter tall. He had a pair of big eyes with long eyelashes, a high nose, and a small mouth like a porcelain doll. He was just too adorable. In the eyes of Gu Shijio, he had always been strong and masculine. She never thought that he would look this way as a kid. When she saw it, she felt her heart softened, She wanted to pick him up and kiss him. A beautiful and cute kid could always attract a lot of attention. Almost all people, regardless of age, liked cute and adorable kids. Gu Shijio was no exception. Although she did not want to see him anymore, she could not resist looking at him now. If, in those 8 years, she gave birth to a baby, maybe this would be his appearance. Chapter 1687. Gu Shijio wanted to have a baby before, but unfortunately, she abruptly moved her eyes away from him and turned away. Let's go. She walked forward for a moment and found that he did not keep up. She was afraid that he would fall into another trap, so she turned back once again. She found that he was still standing in the same place and was working hard to grow taller. The scene looked like a fast-forwarded growth of a child. When she looked back, he had grown into a child of 7 or 8 years old. Two of them looked at each other, and it felt awkward. His fair, tender skin flushed as he felt very embarrassed. He smiled, and a dimple on each of his cheeks could be seen. Fuyus was somewhat bitter by all that was happening. All men would always want to let his wife see his manly and robust side. This was the exact opposite. To make matters worse, this was Fui, a god who had always been highly respected. As she was gazing at him for the first time in his life, he wanted to drill into a hole. Of course, this thought just flashed in his mind for a second, and then he calmed down. He accelerated the speed of his growth a little faster. So Gu Shijio witnessed the whole process of him growing up from a small infant to a small kid, then to a young handsome man, and finally back to his original appearance. Of course, when he was back to his appearance, he covered his face with a mask. It took about 5 to 6 minutes. Gu Shijio seemed to have seen his whole life pass by in those few minutes. She never knew that he used to look so cute as a child. When they were still together, Gu Shijio once asked him about his childhood. Fui told her that he could not recall anything from before he was a teenager. He had no father and no mother. He owned a set of strange skill and slowly survived battle after battle to become the most powerful man in the world. Something did not add up, though. It took him only a second to shrink into a kid. Why was it so difficult for him to grow taller now? Also, he was now the Lord and not Fui. He could freely transform between two identities in front of her. Gu Shijio could not help but look at him again. Fui seemed to understand her doubts, so he explained, "If I am not wrong, Lan Jingyi has told the person behind the scenes about my identity as the Lord. When she sees me later, she will be calling me by my real name. Therefore, it is better to use the identity of the Lord to save her." It was for the sake of Lan Jingyi. He cared a lot about Lan Jingyi on account of Lan Jinka. Gu Shijio did not speak, but turned and left. It was his own business on which identity he wanted to use. It had nothing to do with her. For now, she only wanted to save little Fox and to figure out who was the bastard behind the scene was. After a few turns, there was a heart-shaped building in front of them. The building not only looked like a heart, but instead seemed like a real one. When they saw it from the outside, the building was expanding and shrinking as if a big heart was pumping. The building was also the home of many blood vessels. There were more blood vessels than spiderwebs. Around the building, there was a trained master standing 3 or 4 meters apart, guarding each exit and entrance. Without saying anything, they knew that it was the central part of this building and also the place where the people behind the scene was located. She listened to the surrounding, and it sounded like a dead town. She frowned. Chapter 1688. After she came in, she knew that the guards in this place could not arbitrarily walk around. Each of them had their specific duties and sites to cover. Thus, Gu Shijio and Fuy's fake identities could not be used anymore. Hence, they returned to their original appearance and went into stealth mode. At this moment, the 2 doors of the weird building were closed. They could not see anything in it. There were a total of 10 guards, all of which had level 9 or more of spiritual powers. These guards were extremely cautious, just looking at their postures. They were standing in a strategic formation. With this array, if the front was being attacked, the back could counterattack, while if the end was being attacked, the front could counterattack. Thus it was almost impossible to attack them quietly. Gu Shijio paused to think for a moment. Subconsciously, she wanted to use her teleportation technique to enter the place. She was stopped by Di Fui. No, there is a wizardry barrier that prevents people from teleporting in. Gu Shijio took back her hand. She decided to try to create a diversion. She teleported to a building not far from here and started fire. What she did not expect was that water was sprayed on top of the flame just as it was ignited. This place was quite advanced. When she was about to find another place to start a fire, Di Fui appeared silently behind her. His finger flicked, and there was a flame that burned a building next to them. The water continued to spray above the fire, but this time it failed to set the light off. Gu Shijio looked at him in surprise. Di Fui only said 2 words, spiritual fire. The fire naturally alerted the guards who were wandering around. They ran over to this place. By taking advantage of the chaos, Gu Shijio moved back to the heart-like building and found that the 10 masters were still there. They had no intention to fight the fire. Instead, they stayed even closer to the building and were more alert. It seemed that the people behind the scene had instructed them not to leave the place regardless of the situation. Di Fui continued to set fire at 7 to 8 other places. Screams could be heard from all angles. Although the 10 masters were horrified and panicked, they still did not move. It seemed that even if all the other places were burnt, the 10 people would not move away from their sight, however. This also indicated that the people behind the scene were hidden in this heart-shaped building. He might have already begun to torture Lan Weihu at this time. Gu Shijio was anxious. At this time, Di Fui had come back to her. He looked at her and then looked at the 10 people. He then calmly said, "There is no other way. Let's break into it." When he was about to make a move, Gu Shijio said, "We should split." Di Fui looked at her with his eyebrow raised. Gu Shijio continued to explain, "Once we start to break in, we will attract the attention of the people inside. I am afraid that he might be acting unfavorably to Little Fox. Besides this, it might take at least 10 minutes to settle these 10 masters. By the time we break into the building, the people inside might have escaped. Why don't you attract their attention first? And I will take the opportunity to teleport to the entrance. I will use the cold smashing technique to break through the wizardry barrier that prevents teleportation from stopping the people inside first. After you settle these 10 masters, you go in the method that was proposed by Gu Shijio was the best way for now." However, Di Fui was a bit hesitant. It was not difficult for him to settle these 10 people. It was just a matter of how time he would take. However, if she broke in alone, she would need to face the culprits alone. Chapter 1689, It's better for us to settle the outside together. I don't think it will be too late to go in after we settle the 10 of them. Di Fui rejected her proposition. Gu Shijio frowned. She did not quite understand him. She paused for a while and said, "Are you afraid that I will do something unfavorable to Lan Jingyi if I go in earlier?" Di Fui was speechless. There were times when she was slow, but sometimes she was amazingly sharp. He did not reply, but just stared at her. Gu Shijio deemed his silence as an acknowledgement. She chuckled. "Don't worry. I will never do something unfavorable to her this time. If you don't believe me, I will swear to you. If I don't keep to my word, I will." Before she could finish her sentence, Di Fui interrupted her. His voice was cold. "You don't have to swear. I believe you." He turned and rushed out. Gu Zijia's suggestion was undoubtedly the quickest way. 3 minutes later, Di Fui and the 10 people were already fighting intensely, and 2 of them had been killed. As for Gu Shijio, she had now stood at the entrance of the weird building, raising her hand and breaking the wizardry barrier that surrounded the building. As the wizardry barrier broke, she was shocked by a shrill scream from the inside. She could not recognize the owner of this scream, but the first person that Gu Shijio thought of was Lan Weihu. Her facial expression changed. She teleported, and once she broke into the wizardry barrier. Then she saw the scene inside. There was a fleshy mermaid lying on the ground, and the ghost-like scream came from the mermaid. Lan Weihu's limbs had been tied up, and she was suspended in the air. Her face was pale. There was a big sharp needle inserted in her chest, and blood came out from the other end of the sharp needle. It was still dripping. A blue-shirted young man was standing in front of her, holding a wine cup in his hand. The wine cup was half full, and there was bright red liquid shaking in the container. Apparently, it was the blood from Little Fox's heart. When he turned back, his lips were bloody, and the blood was on his lips. He looked like a vampire. Lan Weihu initially thought that she would die. She was despaired and closed her eyes to bear with the pain. Suddenly, she saw Gu Shijio, who broke in abruptly. Her eyes lit up and her mouth was ajar. Shijio. Her tears rolled down her face. The blue-shirted young man heard Gu's Zygius entrance. He turned and saw Gu Shijio, who just broke in. He sighed. Shijio, you are so fast. You should not get involved in this mess. Gu Shijio grabbed her fingers and looked at this person. This person looked just like Rong Jiao, but the temperament. You are Mo Zhao. That blue-shirted young man laughed and softly said, Shijio, you are indeed very familiar with me. Even if I have changed my appearance, you can still recognize me in a second. Gu Shijio walked closer to him. Where is Rong Jiao? The blue-shirted young man stood straight. He is here. Shijio, this body belongs to him. Can't you recognize it? He laughed. At this moment, he looked entirely different from Rong Jiao. Gu Shijio bit her lips. Are you metamorphosing him or occupying his body? Suddenly, a light flashed in her hand and hit the wine cup in the blue-shirted young man's hand. She put a lot of power into that attack. The blue-shirted young man was not able to dodge it, and the wine cup in his hand had shattered into pieces. The blood inside the container was splashed on the ground. The blue-shirted young man remained silent. There was a flash of light in his eyes. He rushed directly to Lan Weihu, who was hanging there. It was evident that he wanted to take Lan Weihu as hostage. Gu Shijio had been prepared for it and immediately teleported to Lan Weihu. She released her spiritual power from her palm, and there was a white light that hit the chest of the blue-shirted young man. Mo Zhao immediately receded. He retreated to the side of the blood pool and smiled. Chapter 1690. Mo Zhao smiled and said, Shijio, I have always been merciful to you. Do you really want to put me to death? Look, I am even reluctant to kill your friend. I just took a little blood off of her. Gu Shijio quickly glanced at Little Fox. Although the needle on her chest looked dangerous, it was not fatal. As long as the wound was treated well, she would make a good recovery. After Lan Weihu saw the arrival of Gu Shijio, she saw hope and looked more energetic. Shijio, don't care about me. Do what you need to do. Gu Shijio flicked her finger and threw Lan Weihu a pill directly into her mouth. Swallow it. Lan Weihu was very obedient and immediately swallowed the pill. This pill was naturally the best medicine that Gu Shijio had with her. It not only could save her life, but also stop her bleeding. Save me, the bloody mermaid also whispered. Gu Shijio did not care about her. She already recognized that the mermaid was Lan Jingyi. Gu Shijio felt that she was already doing her a favor by not taking the opportunity to kill her, so it was impossible for her to do more than that. Besides, although Lan Jingyi's body looked bloody, those wounds were just injuries on the surface and were not fatal. She was the culprit who caused Little Fox to be so miserable. Thus, she deserved to get punished. What's more, Mo Zhao was still watching her. Hence, she did not have much time to treat her wounds. When she threw the pill to Little Fox, Mo Zhao took the opportunity to attack. He extended his sleeve, and a 5-colored light bloomed like a net to cover Gu Shijio. Little Shijio, let's stay together this time. The colorful light was extremely powerful, so Gu Shijio did not dare to neglect it. She quickly pinched her fingers and countered. She worried that the colorful light from Mo Zhao would impact Little Fox, so she used up her full strength to counterattack. Her palm was warm, and there was a 7-colored ray of light issued from her palm to meet the 5-colored light from Mo Zhao. Bang! There was a loud sound when the two lights collided. Gu Shijio felt the blood burst in her chest, while Mo Zhao retreated several steps. He was shocked. "It's you. What do you mean?" Gu Shijio did not hesitate, but continued to issue another attack. Almost at the same time, there was a loud bang from the direction of the entrance. Someone apparently broke it. Mo Zhao's facial expression changed. He flew out along with the momentum from the attack issued by Gu Shijio and jumped into the blood pool. There was not even a splash of water, and he had disappeared. Gu Shijio was stunned. Did he just escape? Gu Shijio rushed forward and wanted to jump into the blood pool to see. "Don't!" Lan Weihu yelled to discourage such an attempt. "The blood in the pool is poisonous." Gu Shijio stopped hesitantly, and right at that moment, a white man slid into the room. It was Di Fui. He got rid of the 10 people in 5 minutes and broke in. He was stained with blood on his white clothes, and his silver hair was a little messy. His eyes quickly swept through the room and stopped at Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio took a deep breath and quickly told him what happened. Mo Zhao has occupied the body of Rong Jiala. He has just jumped into the blood pool and ran away. Di Fui waved his sleeve and threw something into the blood pool. It dissolved in the pool and disappeared in the blink of an eye. This blood pool was highly toxic and extremely corrosive. Did Mo Zhao jump into the blood pool to escape at the expense of his current body? Or does he have a unique protective body that would allow him to escape from the blood pool? Chapter 1691, Brother Huang, Save me. Lan Jingyi almost could not breathe and stretched out her hand to Di Fui. She was still half naked, so she looked somewhat seductive despite the blood stains all over her. Di Fui took a glance and then quickly turned away. He threw a robe to her. "We should not stay here for too long. Quickly, leave now." He lifted his sleeves and then issued a wave of water to cover Lan Jingyi's body. He gave her a pill and put her into a wizardry barrier. After he finished treating Lan Jingyi, he looked at Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio had already started to crack the 4 thin chains on Lan Weihu. She was an expert in breaking complicated mechanisms, so she would be able to free her friend soon. The only thing that troubled her was that the fine chains had to be pulled out of her shoulder to save her. Little Fox was always afraid of pain, so pulling these chains out was utter torture for her. Gu Shijio could not bear to see Little Fox hurt. "Don't be soft-hearted," Di Fui spoke. "If you want to save her, you need to pull out the chains." Gu Shijio was slightly stunned. She seemed to think of something, and she was looking for anesthetic drugs in her storage bag. Unfortunately, she did not have this kind of medicine in her storage bag at the moment. She could not even find one. She could not help but look at Di Fui and ask, "Do you have a painkiller?" Di Fui frowned. When he was about to open his mouth, Lan Jingyi, who was now hovering around him, cried, "It hurts. Brother Huang, I am in so much pain." Di Fui did not speak, but threw a blue pill to Lan Jingyi, who was in the wizardry barrier. Lan Jingyi swallowed it. Gu Shijio recognized that it was a painkiller which was personally refined by Di Fui. It was more effective than modern anesthetic medicine. If Little Fox could get one of these pills, she would not be in so much pain anymore if she were to pull the chain out of her. She looked at him and waited for him to give her another one. However, she did not expect that Di Fui would disappoint her. "I only have one left." Gu Shijio remained silent. She looked at Lan Jingyi. After Lan Jingyi swallowed the pill, she looked much better. At this moment, Lan Jingyi was looking at her, and she seemed to be a bit smug. Gu Shijio abruptly removed her eyes from Lan Jingyi and did not want to see her anymore. However, Lan Jingyi did not stop. "Brother Huang, I am much better now. Your medicine really works," Di Fui advised her. "Quickly concentrate and practice the Shishin formula that I taught you." Okay." Lan Jingyi was an obedient girl in front of him. She looked at Gu Shijio for a while, then immediately began to practice. Her fishtail was half-curved, and both her palms were closed together. She closed her eyes, and after a while, a faint blue light surrounded her body to complement the white light that Di Fui used to cover her. Gu Zijia's face turned pale. At this moment, she could not delay anymore. She pulled the thin chains out of Lan Weihu's body, although she tried to do so as gently as possible. Lan Weihu still faced unbearable pain. Her face was pale, and there was cold sweat all over it. Nonetheless, Lan Weihu was brave. Her white teeth bit her lip as she tried not to scream. Her lips were so severely bitten that blood was flowing out from them. If the problem were not related to Gu Shijio, she would not be panicked. But since the person she was healing was Little Fox, even though she knew what to do, she still acted gently. Come on, we need to go as soon as possible, Di Fui urged. Gu Shijio was frustrated. She interrupted him. Since you have already rescued the person you wanted to save, you can leave first. Chapter 1692. Di Fui suddenly raised his hand. There was a light issued from his palm that extracted the thin chains on Lan Weihu Shua. The two thin chains in her shoulder were pulled out drenched with blood. Lan Weihu screamed, and she fell to the ground. Gu Shijio was shocked. She tried her best to catch her, but Little Fox had already fainted, and blood was gushing out from her shoulders. Gu Shijio quickly pressed on the acupuncture point on her shoulder to stop the blood flow. Di Fui handed her a white jade bottle. Apply this on her. This was his best gold-inflicted remedy and was very effective in hemostasis treatment. Gu Shijio pushed his palm away and rejected his help. I don't need it, Di Fui continued. Gu Shijio, sometimes you have to think about the big picture and resist acting on your emotion, Gu Shijio sneered. Don't worry, I won't be acting emotionally when it comes to my friend's safety. Di Fui looked at her pale face and frowned. She needs to have the best gold-inflicted remedy to cure her injuries. Otherwise, even though it is not fatal, her skills will be destroyed. Brother Huang, since she doesn't appreciate it, even if, in her heart, her friend's safety is not as important as her pride. Lan Jingyi said out loud. It seemed that she was not focused on her meditation. Gu Shijio quickly took out the gold-inflicted remedy she carried with her and applied it on Lan Weihu. Her medicine was very effective. Once she applied it on Lan Weihu, the blood had stopped flowing. The effect was even better than the remedy provided by Di Fui earlier. Lan Jingyi was speechless. Her teasing did not work, and she was a bit resentful. She stared at the gold-inflicted remedy in Gu Zijia's hand. Well, that was also provided by Brother Huang. Only Brother Huang can make that high-quality medicine. Gu Shijio looked at the Di Fui coldly. You can ask your Brother Huang whether this medicine was provided by him. This medicine was made by her recently, and it had nothing to do with Di Fui. It was not true that she was not as good as Di Fui from many aspects. However, at least in pharmaceutical matters, she could definitely match him. Lan Jingyi still wanted to talk, but all of a sudden, the wizardry barrier shook, and she rolled for several rounds. She had a lot of wounds on her body. Therefore, this rolling around had hurt her. She screamed in pain, and her body was trembling. Di Fui coldly said, If you are very free, I don't mind leaving you here. Lan Jingyi's facial expression changed, and she quickly said, No, I know that I am wrong. Brother Huang, brother, since I am also a Heaven's Gift disciple, please don't leave me here. Di Fui gazed at her, and I did not speak. Lan Jingyi did not dare to speak again. Heaven's Gift disciple? Was Lan Jingyi also a Heaven's Gift disciple? She was not previously. Was she a new one? Gu Shijio knew that Lan Jingyi was skilled in the wood element, and it was the same as Long Sai. Did Di Fui give the vacancy to Lan Jingyi after removing Long Sai as a Heaven's Gift disciple? Gu Shijio asked, Is she a Heaven's Gift disciple? When did it happen? After all, she was also a tester of Heaven's Gift disciples, so she had the right to know the truth. Di Fui answered casually, not long ago. Lan Jingyi looked at Di Fui and then looked at Gu Shijio. She could not help but interrupt. It happened 2 months ago. 2 months ago, I was injured and could not stop bleeding. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.